And you've mentioned that you don't actually think that regime collapse, as it was often spoken about during the war and whether it might lead to it. Now it sort of seems like people were maybe too optimistic in that regard.
Well, no, what I said, regime change. So the distinction is between regime change and regime collapse or regime failure. So again, my point is that I think people are way too optimistic. I mean, I think people were thinking about Libya, right? And we'll go and bomb these places, whatever. Suddenly people will rush out in the streets and say, but of course, it also shows that Iran is not Libya. Okay. I mean, this is, it's a different type of country. It's got a population of 90 million, Libya, I don't know what the population, 4 million or whatever. But also a completely different geography and historical inheritance, whatever. I think the thing is that what you are seeing is the possibility of regime failure. Regime change is something that I think, it's not something necessarily I want to speculate on at the moment. I think regime failure will predate any sort of regime change. But that regime failure, I think, is a distinct possibility because the regime is struggling. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's struggling.
And what does regime failure, what would that actually look like? How is it different from the way it looks now?
Well, I mean, I think this is a sort of an incremental thing. I mean, and it depends. So let's give you another example. At the moment, they're constantly saying that there are gas explosions going on around the country. Okay, there are people. And some of these seem fairly targeted or very particular. And of course, they're saying these are sort of seditious, these are actions of Israeli agents blowing up places. And blowing up places. And the government is saying, it's a gas explosion. It's entirely possible, of course, that they are gas explosions. And what they are is a failure of the infrastructure. The infrastructure that hasn't been invested in is beginning to fail and creak under the pressure. And you're getting a lot of these sort of, disasters around the country. So that is it's a process. It's like I say to people, when you look at the Islamic Republic, it's dying a death by 1,000 cuts. And any of these cuts could be fatal. But, I deliberately use this death by 1,000 cuts because it's incremental. It's a sort of a deterioration, a failure of the infrastructure to be able to deliver. And also this moral vacuum, a moral corruption in the system. Yeah. I mean, think about it. In the middle of the war, you get this sort of outrageous comment, by the Israeli Americans saying, evacuate Tehran. Okay, evacuate Tehran. We're going to cause mayhem. Again, a fairly sort of reckless thing in mind. But what people didn't notice really is that Iranian officials then said, no, don't worry. It's all fine. Stay. But actually, this had no impact at all. Basically, the minute the Iranian officials said, it's fine, everything is fine, stay, people left even quicker. I mean, they weren't ready. They were more willing to believe the threats of Trump and Netanyahu than they were willing to believe the reassurances of their own officials. You see what I mean? It's not. And one of the reasons for that is because the Iranian authorities had no civil defense procedures in place. I mean, they had nothing. There were no shelters. There were no air raid sirens. I mean, the whole thing is a mockery, really. I mean, it's a disaster on that. And I think, what you'll see is a gradual degradation of the way in which the state operates. And then, of course, you'll get to a point. What is that famous Hemingway quote, where he says, how did you go bankrupt? Well, first very slowly and then very quickly. Then this is basically the situation we're in. It's very slow at the moment. I think it's probably quicker than it might have been, but it's gathering speed and then it'll click. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's very difficult. One shouldn't get involved in predicting these things. One should simply be involved in anticipating and contingency planning. But it may well be a group of people will come round and say, anticipating the problems and say, look, we're going to establish a new government within the framework of the Islamic Republic. But Iran watchers like me will know that this new government is basically a change in regime. It won't announce it's a change of regime, but it is a change of regime because it will completely come and say, right, we're not going to get involved in regional things. We're going to step down the nuclear program, as you say, because that's basically the direction travel it's going. I mean, even the Russians have said to the Iranians, abandon enrichment, by the way, right? Okay. We don't want this. We want better relations with the West. We want to open our economy, all these sort of things. If it does all that, while the Islamic Republic remains in name, it's a completely different animal, is what I'm saying.
If you care about geopolitics, and I assume you do since you're listening to this, you might want to consider signing up to get my newsletter, Station Zero. Once every week or two, you'll get a free geopolitical analysis, a story, trend, or pattern of something that's really important but that most people tend to miss. Like the one where I talk about the major threat that Hungary's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, is facing, why he's increasingly likely to be defeated in the next year's elections, why his new challenger is not at all who you would expect, and why it might be a lesson for politicians everywhere. If you want to sign up, just click the link in the description.